Greetings all, D&Disability here. I'm going to start the new year with an easy topic. We're going to talk about an article I stumbled across back from 2021 and why it matters now in 2024, and kind of how it relates to gaming as a whole, particularly with the actions of Wizards of the Coast in recent years. Tabletop RPGs that tell stories from disabled perspectives. An article by Coleman Galeretto states that tabletop RPGs centered around written rules, physical objects, and the human imagination are frequently more accessible than video games for people with disabilities, which is true. And that he cites both Survival of the Able and the RPG Sign, which was developed in the 1970s, as two examples of RPGs created by players with disabilities. Survival of the Able, in case you hadn't heard, is a medieval zombie survival game, which, not that zombie survival has anything necessarily to do with disability beyond, the obvious relationships to monstrosity. But that said, you do play as characters with disabilities in the game. According to the Survival of the Able Kickstarter, you overcome incredible challenges against all odds, and despite your disability, as able-bodied people around you panic and fall victim to the zombies. As opposed to kind of the traditional stat system, the game uses taste, touch, hearing, etc. to show that disability is a spectrum and demonstrate the impact of disabilities as often being minor affairs that affect certain situations. While survival is about the general disabled experience, Sign is something a little different. Its goal was to capture a small part of the deaf/mute experience. It utilizes note cards, 3.6 by 6 inches, I think, and some minor pamphlet-style books to facilitate play. It's definitely a rules-light system. It's largely an improv game, not one based on long campaigns in medieval Europe or crawling through the tunnels of London to escape otherworldly horrors. As I mentioned, Sign has been around since 1977 and was developed by 5 Nicaraguan children. And if brought at Thorny Games, link in the description, the proceeds go to helping with Sign education, which is awesome. Both RPGs put the player within the disabled experience in an intentional way. But so does one of my favorites, Morkborg. This is what makes this a response video, by the way. Otherwise, I'd just be rehashing everything Galeretto has said. What I haven't seen much online is how non-disabled companies have utilized the disabled experience, which is what Morkborg does. The trauma, broken bodies, bad habits section takes these tables and uses them to show a mix of physical and mental disabilities, including bipolar and cataracts, just to name a couple. These tables often give symptoms of underlying problems as well, such as if you're a pyromaniac whose best friend is a skull, you show signs of deeper psychological/neurological struggles. While optional tables, the game makes these an accepted part of reality. It shows that no one is perfect. Indeed, most characters are intended to be far from it. My home RPG system uses this same idea as well. You're seeing the graphic here. And characters have a good chance, as you can see, but not guaranteed, to start with a variety of physical or mental changes. Unlike Survival or Morkborg, my rules don't assign a flat mechanical penalty to the game. Both Morkborg and my home system leave the player and GM to discuss any penalty on a situational basis. One of my players, Carmine, was playing a character with a missing hand. He had replaced the hand with a morning star, the whole spiked ball and a stick thing, not the flail that some idiots try and call what a morning star is. That's not it. Which served as a main weapon, and he used it in conjunction with the shield in his other hand. This did not penalize him really in any way, until he had to do things like swing across a room with moving platforms. If you think of say, White Plume Mountain and the mud-filled steam room with the swinging platform traps. I was channeling that in this encounter. And what this did was force him to put his shield away, thus compromising his AC, so he could cross the room. In most, 10 by 10 corridors, flat, level dungeon design, his missing hand didn't necessarily matter, but he needed effectively at least one hand to cling to the swinging rope and to balance himself on this swinging platform. And this missing limb became an opportunity for an in-game challenge. It also made the players, as in all of them, the rest of the players, stop and think. But Carmine was empowered to find his own solutions. After the incident, by the way, he had a hook made for grabbing and climbing and manipulating doors, basically the same reason you would say have a hook for a hand traditionally, and began to see the value in swapping out these appendages. I could tell a number of stories like this, but I think you get the point. The point is that, in my view, is adaptation. Putting players in the uncomfortable situation of my character must do X to compensate for Y. And then let the players figure out how that element comes into play. What they need to do to accomplish their goal, the X in this proverbial equation. The last character I played with a disability was a compulsive alcoholic. The party had to ration his money and not leave him alone in town, or they would quickly find him broke and hanging out with the homeless, spending all of his money on food and mostly booze for his fellow homeless people. The difference with my character was the character did not want to change. There was no want to overcome this disability, alcoholism, which is a topic for another day, but ultimately demonstrates the spectrum of disability, right? We can't see it as a problem ready to be overcome. We can't expect that players or characters might want to change something about them. Just because you live in a world where you could regenerate a limb magically doesn't mean A, you can afford it, or B, you'd even want it. Maybe you like still having that missing appendage. Maybe it reminds you of something. Speaking as someone who only has one working eye, I don't want a different eye. If you could give me a brand new working eye on the right side of my head, I'd probably tell you no. Part of it is out of fear, part of it is out of comfort, but also part of it is that I've always lived this way and humans aren't one to change. And while that topic is, once again, for another video, it's not always about overcoming the challenge, but experiencing the challenge to begin with is important. And I'd like to see other RPGs do what these three do, what Morkborg, Sign, and of course Survival of the Able do. So consider bringing this into your D&D game. You don't have to give fixed penalties. You can discuss things as they come up, as they're needed, and it really adds some character and color to your characters and helps give them a bit of a backstory, even if they die, that same session or 2 sessions later if you're level 1. Alright, see you all next week with my next video. Thought I'd give you a short one here. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and of course ring that bell for notifications for my next upload. I typically do about 1 a week.